1,200 miles, and Midway is almost at the very tip. It's an essential port of call for travelers in this remote area, and one of the most important wildlife sanctuaries in the Pacific. A typical coral atoll. Its 3 small islands are surrounded by a circular reef enclosing a lagoon, a haven for spinner dolphins. Every morning, more than 250 race in from the open ocean. It's easy to see how spinners got their name. They may be shaking off parasites or signaling their location to each other. After a hard night's hunting out at sea, dolphins return to the lagoon for rest and relaxation. They're sociable creatures and have strong relationships with family and friends. They also have a clear hierarchy, which keeps everyone in line. Here, in these calm, sheltered waters, they can drop their guard. Dolphins also love to play, even if there's nothing but a piece of weed for a toy. The games continue until late afternoon, when it's time to head out to fish again. The lagoon is also a hideaway for one of the Pacific's most endangered inhabitants, the Hawaiian monk seal. There are only around 1,200 left in the world, and 60 or so live here on Midway. Like the dolphins, they will feed in the open ocean, but need sheltered waters and quiet beaches to haul up on. Monk seals are solitary at sea, hence their name, but beaches are vital for their social life. Youngsters are particularly friendly, and time on shore is a chance to find a playmate. They may fish out at sea for up to 2 weeks at a time, traveling several hundred miles. So it's not surprising that before long, the urge to sleep is overwhelming. Monk seals can sleep for 2 or 3 days while digesting a meal, even on hot metal. Midway wasn't always as peaceful as it looks today. For nearly 60 years, it was a U.S. naval base. Many remnants remain. In June 1942, this small outpost witnessed one of the most decisive battles of the Second World War. 6 months after bombing Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked Midway from the air as part of a planned invasion of Hawaii. While a few defenders on land held off the attack, out at sea, the American fleet managed to sink 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. The Battle of Midway turned the tide of war in the Pacific. Although there were many human casualties, the island survived the attack, and the albatross population lived to fly another day. The atoll remained a strategic military base for more than a half a century. But in 1997, the Navy moved out and the guns were finally abandoned. Now the island is a national wildlife refuge, and the people who run it live in harmony with the animals. By January, the albatross mating has started to produce results. The mother lays only 1 egg a year, so it's worth being an attentive parent. Mother and father take turns to incubate and to guard the nestling once it's hatched. This is just the start of a 6-month battle for survival. If it's lucky, this chick will be strong enough to leave the island by late summer. In the meantime, it's completely dependent on its parents, and there's no time to waste. As soon as an adult is relieved from nest duty, it heads out to sea to gather food. It may leave the nursery for up to a week at a time, flying as far as the coast of California or Alaska. Albatross eat mostly squid and flying fish eggs, which are scarce around the atoll. But Midway's waters are rich in other foods, attracting other diners. Green sea turtles breed on neighboring islands in the archipelago, but travel hundreds of miles to Midway to find their favorite food. Turtles eat algae, jellyfish, and sponges, but one of their favorites is a seaweed called codium. While Midway was a military base, no commercial fishing was allowed within 50 miles, so the seas here are still full of large fish and the predators that eat them. Galapagos sharks, escorted by a group of mackerel scad, or opilu. Too small for the shark to bother eating, opilu employ it as a bodyguard. In many other parts of the Pacific, sharks are slaughtered for their fins, which are made into a special soup. But here, they gather in large numbers. They're safe. Other local residents nibble at the reef itself, like these convict surgeonfish. But their food supply is constantly being eroded. Once, this atoll would have been a towering volcano like the main Hawaiian Islands. But over millions of years, it's been worn away. In just another few thousand years, it will be completely submerged. Wave action and tides have deposited the pulverized coral inside the lagoon, creating 3 small islands. Sand Island has the town and runway, and many albatross. Eastern Island, uninhabited by humans, is a refuge for other seabirds too, including sooty terns. Around 2 million birds depend on Midway to breed. Here, the sooties mingle with red-footed boobies and many others. But there's one that stands out from the crowd, the great frigate bird. The male builds the nest, then advertises for a mate. It's a buyer's market, though. She can afford to be fussy. There's no denying it. Size matters. Impressed, the female finally decides to take a closer look. But at this point, she's still window shopping. The male's red pouch shows that he's virile and healthy. But has he also chosen a sturdy nest site? This one obviously isn't up to snuff. He's back at square one. The albatross are much further along in their breeding cycle. The parents are returning from sea in the thousands, heavily laden with food for their growing chicks. Back on land, they deliver their cargo to the chick, which may have had nothing to eat for several days. While very young, the chick feeds mostly on a kind of oil produced in the parent's stomach. Like most babies, it moves on to solids later. The chick must bulk up fast to have any chance of meeting its departure deadline. At this stage, it's still covered in down. There's a long way to go. As dusk falls, the parents head out to sea again to fetch another helping.
Coming up, one of Midway's most endangered birds returns to nest only at night, and the monk seal population continues to thrive when Wild Discovery returns.
In summer, Midway never sleeps, and on Sand Island, the night sky is full of strange cries. Another visitor has returned under cover of darkness. It's much smaller than the albatross, and it lays its eggs in an underground burrow. The bone-in petrel has landed. One of Midway's most endangered birds, it returns to its nest only at night. The petrels were once decimated by rats, which invaded their burrows and ate the eggs and chicks. But the rats have now been eliminated, and the petrel population is rebounding. By midsummer, the albatross population is booming too, and space is short. This carpet of new life creates problems for other islanders. Like all youngsters, the chicks are a bit lacking in road sense. Even with the greatest care, collisions are inevitable. The chicks seem completely oblivious to human activity. As far as they're concerned, they were there first. On Midway's beaches, it's a different story. Because monk seals are so endangered and so sensitive to human interference, most of the beaches are reserved strictly for them. They're left virtually undisturbed to doze the days away. But mature males are more active than most. They patrol the shoreline, looking for a likely mate. Sometimes they stray onto another's turf. The peace is about to be shattered. The new boy is losing ground. He finally decides it would be easier to look elsewhere. Since humans were banned from most of the beaches, this has become a regular sight on Midway, a pup. It suckles for a month, gaining around 45 pounds, while the devoted mother loses up to half her body weight. Monk seal populations are still at crisis level, but each mother and baby is a hopeful sign. A few years ago, no babies were born on Midway. But now the breeding rate improves each season. When it's only 6 weeks old, its mother will leave this pup, and it will be at its most vulnerable. At least the lagoon offers a lot of protection. Spinner dolphins also feel safe here. After being on constant alert at sea, time out is vital for a dolphin's health. It's also when mating takes place. Belly to belly, with the male underneath. Dolphins are promiscuous. females mating with several suitors within a short space of time. In summer, another creature cruises the shallows in search of sex. The eagle ray. For most of the year, they forage alone, using their snout to dig up mollusks and crabs from the seabed. But now this female is ready to mate, and she's not short of attention. One male starts to pursue her. And then there are two. In less than 3 feet of water, there isn't much room to maneuver, especially when a third contender joins the chase. For the female, this sparring is stressful, even violent, but at least the lagoon is free from other threats. Out on the reef, danger is everywhere. Predators, like the Galapagos sharks, don't often enter the lagoon. There's plenty to eat out here. But even on the reef, Midway provides protection for its smaller, more defenseless residents. Shipwrecks, legacy of the island's war-torn past. They have become artificial reefs, ideal refuge for many fish, and for turtles too. Most of the wrecks lie undetected in very deep water, planes too. But this Corsair bomber is only about 120 feet down. From a distance, it appears abandoned. Close up, it's a different story. Striped squirrelfish take cover in the fuselage. Below, a dragon moray lies in ambush. And under one wing, a platoon of lobsters. The Corsair also has more exclusive residents. This is a morwong, seldom glimpsed in the Hawaiian Islands. It usually stays much deeper, out of range of divers, but here it doesn't need to hide. An angelfish, Japanese in origin. This is about as far east as it goes. And a sunrise wrasse, one of the world's rarest fish, hardly ever seen anywhere else but here. This variety of life makes the Corsair one of Midway's most important wrecks.
Coming up, the skies above Midway still buzz with aerial combat. Ambushes on the wing when Wild Discovery returns.
More than half a century after this plane hit the ocean bed, the skies above still buzz with aerial combat. Between frigates and red-tailed tropic birds. It's not a fair fight, however. The frigates operate in gangs. Heavily laden with food for its chick, the tropic bird runs the gauntlet. It's a desperate bid to stay a wing beat ahead. Daylight robbery. The victim coughs up, and the muggers swoop in to seize their prize. Fortunately, for every lost lunch, another tropic bird slips through the net and makes it home. By late June, almost all the seabirds are feeding chicks, and the island is a hive of activity. The albatross parents are working flat out. Any break in the schedule is a luxury. Their chicks are almost full-grown and have almost full-grown appetites. Lysons eat mostly squid, while blackfoots specialize in flying fish eggs. But now, food isn't the only worry. With temperatures in the 80s, dehydration is a major killer. Hungry and overheated, the chicks can only wait for their parents' return. But even a short delay can be fatal now. Several hundred die each day from the extreme heat or hunger. Others die from being fed the wrong sort of food. Plastic, picked up accidentally by their parents from the ocean surface. All this was discarded from ships or faraway shores and ended up in one chick's stomach. Floating plastic isn't the only hazard. Here, in this remote corner of the globe, ocean currents dump tons of rubbish on the reef and beaches. Bottles, fishing floats, and most dangerous of all, nets. This inquisitive young monk seal could die from her curiosity. She may have been attracted by the colors, or by fish and crabs sheltering in the net. But once in, there's no way out.
Okay, hang on.
But this time she's lucky. She's been spotted, although she doesn't appreciate it.
Okay, hang on.
It's never easy dealing with a frightened animal, especially one with the bite of a large dog. As many as 20 monk seals are disentangled from debris every year in this chain of islands, and there are probably many others that don't get found. This one was lucky to get a second chance. The first couple of years of a seal's life are by far the most risky. If fishing nets don't get them, sharks might, or they may simply not be able to catch enough food to survive. But it's also a time for play.
Coming up, albatross chicks test out their wings and wreak a little havoc on the runways when Wild Discovery returns.
Midway is sweltering. The albatross chicks are only a week or two away from independence, but they've got fresh problems, apart from the fierce summer sun. Many have strayed onto the island runway and have to be removed by the airport fire crew. Each time a plane needs to land, the runway must be cleared. Now that the military has gone, Midway is open to visitors who come to dive, fish, and watch the wildlife. This unique experience begins the minute they step off the plane. But at this time of year, visitors are also likely to witness a tragedy or two. It's a tough time for the chicks. Most of the adult albatross have now left Midway and are back far out at sea. Many chicks have had their last feed, but they're still hanging on, waiting, not quite ready to go it alone. Meanwhile, their weary parents taste freedom once again. At last, the weather breaks. Suddenly revived, the youngsters start to try their wings. A drink works wonders. The chicks have a new spring in their step. Barely a trace is now left of the youngsters' downy covering. It's been almost replaced by a full set of flight feathers. Their impatience grows, and the older, better-fed chicks are ready to give it a whirl. Others know their limits and wait a little longer. At least there's a ready-made runway, although it's a big leap of faith to actually leave the ground. A 6-foot wingspan is unwieldy for a beginner. Suddenly, it all comes together. And then, all falls apart. Eventually, it's do or die. Early flights are often short and sweet, but once the chick has got the hang of its enormous wings, it soon begins to hone its skills. Often, this is its very first sight of the ocean. Learning to fly over water may cushion a fall, but it's also risky. It's even more tricky to take off from the ocean surface. The water is one of a young albatross's biggest enemies. Although its wings are covered in waterproofing oil, they can only stand so much soaking. All around the atoll, beginners ride the waves, like Hawaii's surfers hundreds of miles to the south. But if they get overwhelmed by the breakers, they won't get a second chance. Waterlogged wings are heavy and almost impossible to lift. Many chicks do survive this training period, however, and start to feel the pull of the open ocean. But for those that haven't perished from heat or hunger, crash landing or waterlogging, there's one final peril to avoid. Predators don't normally enter the lagoon, but tiger sharks are the exception. Every year at precisely this time, they cross the reef to prey on the vulnerable chicks. Once in the shark's sights, few make it back to shore. Now, takeoff really is a matter of life and death. For an albatross, the safest place is in the air. Against all odds, around 3/4 of chicks fledge successfully and head out across the ocean to begin their adult life. Once in the air, they may not set foot on land again for several years. Leaving Midway and its other wildlife thousands of miles behind, each young albatross will wander alone exploring distant corners of the Pacific. But however far it roams, one day it too will get the urge to raise a family and to return to Midway, an island of life.
This has been a presentation of the Discovery Channel and the BBC, world-class television.